It's Wednesday morning and I'm trying to look cool in my professional long sleeve shirt. Ha. Anyway, self esteem, loving ourselves. There's some issues that converge in the gay community that especially hit gay men really hard. And the first is all of us are the only minority group that's brought up by people and institutions that basically hate us. Think about it. Even if our parents were, quote, supportive, they still didn't understand what the hell we were going through, and we didn't either. So basically, we put up a firewall between ourselves and our families, and they would tell us we love us, and we would be thinking to ourselves, oh, yeah, you say that, but I see what happens to people when they tell you the truth about who we are, so, or even the truth of who I am. So we learn to withhold and hide, and then we don't develop normal intimacy skills that anybody else would have. At least if you're a member of a racial or ethnic minority, usually you're brought up in a family of those same kind of people, so they tell you how to navigate that difference, especially in the face of a larger group of people who are out to get you. But we don't have that experience. We all have to fend for ourselves emotionally from a very early age, and that becomes a real problem. So here's some thoughts on how to deal with that. The first is this journey of learning to love ourselves unconditionally is really it's worth it. So, the first thing is we are children of dysfunctional families because our families were not equipped to help us figure out how to be queer. It's that simple. Here's an excellent book you should get a hold of and read. You can find it at most book outlets, and I'll leave it at that. Yes, it's adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. And just because you didn't have an alcoholic in your family doesn't mean that it wasn't dysfunctional. The basic rule for a dysfunctional family is so powerful, no one ever has to articulate it. Everyone figures it out from a very early age. And that rule is don't have feelings, don't talk about feelings, no matter what. And since at the very best we all grew up in families where we couldn't talk about our feelings of sexual attraction to the same sex, most of us judge ourselves horribly, filled with a lot of self-hatred. And then, of course, what do? We get out in the dating world hoping we're going to find somebody who's going to rescue us from that. And guess what happens? Most of the people we meet have the same malady. They're looking for somebody to rescue them. And then what happens, even if the sexual attraction is strong, the two of us get together, and once we've gotten our rocks off, it's like, now what? So it's really important for queer people to learn to identify with ourselves and our community and figure out ways to be happy in this otherwise very messed up world. And that's the other thing, especially if we're white, we're very tempted to identify with straight men and kind of hide under the radar and hope they don't notice us. My black friends tell me that I can pass, that being gay, I can pass. And I tell them, yeah, for about a week. And then once the boys club figures out I'm queer, I'm quietly escorted out the back door. And dodging that bullet, or at least trying to dodge that bullet, causes all kinds of internal damage. And do you really want to live less than half a life? Because when you identify or try to identify as a straight man and say things like, oh, I'm not into all that gay rights stuff, or I'm not into all that, I'm not like most gay men. I'm not like most gay men. I've heard that one my whole life, and usually from some of the most angry, unhappy gay men I've ever met in my life. And then I say, well, actually, you are. because you really avoid being gay. You don't have any gay friends, and the only time you even associate with the gay community is when you want to have sex, and then you have to get drunk as hell to do it. And as soon as you get your rocks off, you want to get this guy out of your house at 3 in the morning before any of the neighbors see another man leaving your house. Or some version of that story. Anyway, the sooner we can embrace our differences and see them as superpowers, as a way to navigate this world in a loving and joyful way, the happier you're going to be. So if you get a hold of that book, don't read it as an interesting excursion to learn about those people, but rather look at it from the perspective of, oh God, this is me and this is my family. Because even the best of families usually don't like talking about hard emotions and don't like the expression of them. And so basically we grow up putting on a show and then wonder why we have such a hard time letting down that guard when we finally meet someone that we are really in love with. That dynamic applies to all kinds of people, but it particularly hits our community very hard, period. And last but not least, yes, we've just elected Orange Hitler, comma, the biggest buffoon. Don't even get me started. All I can say is I know who he is and I know what he is, and I expect anything could happen. And some of it will anger me and frustrate me, but you know what? I'm not going to spend all my time complaining about somebody who doesn't care what I think. If I'm going to spend any time, it's going to be organizing and working to change the Democratic Party so it's more representative of the needs of working people. Medicare for all, free public education, tuition-free university and college education or trade school, increase in Social Security, increase the minimum wage, all those basic things that Bernie's been talking about for almost 10 years. And of course, the establishment Democratic Party doesn't want anything to do with that because they're taking money from the same people the Republicans are taking money from. So I don't give my money to the DNC. I give it to people like Bernie and AOC and Justice Democrats and Our Revolution, because at least they're trying to run candidates for the Congress and the Senate, especially the Congress, because that's where the money decisions get made. And by the way, in 2 years we have midterm elections, and actually less than 2 years now. And that's the real place to put the brakes on the status quo and try to get things changed. So yes, you cannot ignore politics because it's all tied into the well-being of people, and that includes you. Somehow you are not going to dodge this bullet. It's going to happen to all of us, and the sooner you can embrace the collective us and start working to change things for the better, understand the mechanics of how all this works. Your congressional election is the most important election you'll ever vote for, other than your local city and county people. They're important too. Anyway, that's my preaching for Wednesday morning, 2 days after the blessed event of America's return to fascism, except this time it's even worse. But if it's any consolation, I don't think Elon Musk is going to last more than 6 months. We'll see. And otherwise, have a wonderful day.